Thank you very much. If I could perhaps call on Ambassador Dr. Manuel, Director General of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC, to give us some closing remarks.
Actually,
you have one.
I'm wired, yes. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much to Optimus, to IDB, and my colleagues at SECO and SDC for organizing this important conference. I feel a little bit that at the end of the day, I haven't been able to attend the entire conference, but from the lineup of speakers and panelists, I have to assume that everything has been said by now, but not everybody has said it, and that's where Hubertus and I come in. So let me just offer a few general comments from the perspective of development agency. First of all, I'm greatly encouraged by this conference. Why? First of all, because of the turnout. I understand that earlier today it was standing room only, and I'm sure those who have left are now busy drafting impact bonds out there. And I'm also greatly encouraged because this conference has brought together actors that may give different weight to different aspects, to different objectives, such as profitability, and development. But they do share overlapping interests. Government agencies, investors, philanthropic institutions, they all have overlapping interests in stability, peace. I refer back to what our colleague from ICRC said. We all have interest in a well-educated and healthy population in developing countries. We have interest in good governance, in non-corrupt governance. We have interest in a favorable investment climate. So these are common interests that we share, and based on these common interests, we form partnerships. And we form partnerships between government agencies such as SECO and SDC, philanthropic organizations such as Optimus, and also in private investors with an enlightened notion of return on investment. Now, what do I mean by enlightened notion of return on investment? I mean three things. First of all, as human beings, we're not profit maximizers. We are benefit optimizers, which means that every time we only pursue financial gain, we are actually working against our own self-interest. Second, social and ecological sustainability are not accidental byproducts of responsible business dealings, but they are its main goal, beside, of course, financial viability. Let's be clear about that. And third, to be part of the solution rather than to be part of the problem is not only the right thing to do for responsible investors, it's also the smart thing to do. And here I would say to the CEO of BlackRock, yes, companies do serve social purposes, but they also very much serve their own best interest. Again, because as I said, private investors, they also have an interest in stable environment, in healthy and well-educated workforce, in stable societies, and a healthy environment, and prosperous people as consumers. So from the SDC and SECO's perspective, why, where, and how do public development agencies such as ours contribute to the promotion of sustainable investment? First of all, why do we contribute? Well, our mission is very much to relieve suffering, to promote well-being and prosperity, and to reduce global risks. Where do we contribute? That's the whole question of additionality. We only contribute, or we only support endeavors that would not happen without us, or at least not happen in the same fashion. In other words, we don't investments that would happen anyway. How do we contribute? We trade on our specific strengths, such as knowledge of context. Typically, as a development agency, we have been in developing context in certain countries for a very, very long time. We know the risks that are attendant to an investment in a specific context. We have a network of people that we can provide access to investors. We can provide access to decision makers, to all kinds of networks. We have typically, or hopefully, not typically, hopefully we have credibility as a government actor. And through that credibility, and we can provide political comfort. And also, and this is perhaps the most pertinent to the conversation we've been having here today, we can, in fact, and we do mitigate risks. We talked about all the different kinds of bonds that we invest in, or also an instrument that we developed at SDC, so-called social impact incentives, which is less of an investment vehicle over the long term, but pay as you go, basically. Pay for impact as you go. It's complicated, but we have our specialist, Lars Stein, is right here in the second row. So if you're interested, ask him. So if people ask me, is impact investment more like a houseboat? Not a very good house and not a very good boat. Or is it more like brunch, better than breakfast and better than lunch? I think the jury is in, because a lot of investors, or a growing community of investors, are voting with their wallets. So again, thank you very much for providing this platform for a great exchange on, and to provide also visibility to this movement in the impact investment space. And again, a platform to learn from each other, just from what I have been able to witness myself. I'm impressed, and again, very grateful for inviting us, for having us, SECO and SDC, part of this effort. And we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then finally, let me introduce Hubertus Kuelps, Global Head of UBS and Society, for really the closing remark.
The closing remarks. Okay, so the last thing standing between you and maybe something to eat and maybe also something to drink. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Sager, for your kind remarks. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored actually to be here to give the last few words, and I promise I will keep it relatively short. As the head of UBS and Society, I'm also responsible for the Optimus Foundation. Now, they do all the work and all the fantastic work that they do, but I get to be the one who on occasion represents them and helps them through the company when something needs to be pushed through that is potentially a little bit more difficult. And as you know, they put on this conference today. And I think events like this one today will go a long way to convincing other philanthropists, investors, bilateral and multilateral donors of the huge potential of co-creation and co-investment to help solve the social challenges we face. Now, I really want to make only 2 points. The first one is to say thank you. And maybe not in the classical sense that you would expect that I would say, you know, thank you for being here, thank you for discussing, thank you for being active participants. All of that, of course, counts as well. But I would maybe start by saying thank you for your courage, because I'm not sure that even 3 years ago, a meeting like this, including the private sector and the public sector, would have happened in this way, shape, and form. There's a great term in German that is not really translatable, but I'm going to say it anyway since some of you speak German. It's called Berührungsängste, the fear of working together too closely for the sake of potentially how others might view that. And so takes a little bit. Great, we have a word for that in German, Berührungsängste. So you know, that is something that if we want to make progress in this space, we have to continue to overcome. Today, for me, is one of those days where we have taken a step in that direction, where we have overcome that because it's a public meeting. And of course, we've had conversations like this in the past, and of course, impact bonds have been developed and put out that are public-private partnerships, but it takes a little bit of courage, and it will take courage as we move forward. If I say things like joint marketing, some of you will cringe, and I understand that. But I think those are things that we need to think about and take steps to in the future if we want to scale this. So thank you for your courage is the first message. The second one is that we will need to continue to collaborate to scale. And this is not a message from me or from us, as in UBS, to you. This is more of a philosophical question on saying we do not want to be, UBS does not want to be one of the few banks that does this. Please help us to make sure that this type of work is something that a lot of banks, if not all banks, do. And it may seem a bit atypical for a company to be saying that, because normally what we try to do is to say, let's differentiate. Let's see how we can be different potentially from a competitor, because that might give us an advantage in the market. I am saying specifically here that is not something that we want in this space. Impact bonds will only be successful if a lot of banks do it, if it becomes mainstream, and we cannot be the only ones to try to convince our peers to do this. There are platforms and collaboration spaces underway where we are working with our peers, but the more you can help by approaching them, by working with them as well, I'm not saying necessarily regulation, but the more you can work with them and push them in this direction, the better it would be. So we are very, very interested in you helping us to continue to drive collaboration in the space and to drive to make sure that we get this to scale and to the type of impact that we know it can deliver. Last but not least, I also specifically want to say thank you to our partners from the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, and also the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, and the Inter-American Development Bank for helping to make today's conference a success. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you moved forward, both mentally from your ideas, but also potentially with some specifics that we can implement going forward. I can say that for sure. We look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you very, very much.